Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great week so far. This week I figured I would just break down how I made my Artemis versus Xander fight. So, you know, it's quite different from my usual stuff in terms of like visual style and whatnot, and I'm very happy with how it came out. I was inspired by this one guy named, oh, forgive me, so I was inspired off of this one guy named the Matthew Flames on YouTube, which I'll link him down in the description because of some of his animations. I found specifically his most recent one, Omni-Man versus Metro Man. I was like, oh, this is really cool. So I checked out the rest of his channel, and he had an amazing how-to tutorial. And so that is kind of what started me down this rabbit hole. So I was like, oh, I'll do some mimicry, do my own thing, kind of figure out how I want to go about this. So this shader is directly from the tennis section of his video, so, credit where credit's due. But then there's also Artemis. Artemis took quite a bit to get right for a couple of reasons. Number one is I didn't have as concrete of an idea for kind of what style to give Artemis compared to Xander. And number two, my original attempts just were not working. In fact, I can show you that here. We've got this halftone design, which I was kind of working on, which, as cool as it is, it felt very busy. So it was like, I would rather go with something a little bit more simple. So that's where we come up with this. Basically, it's these lines here in the shadow, and then if you look, you can kind of see some pink dots, some violet dots there, just to show a little bit more of like highlight specialty. And then there's also a Fresnel effect that kind of gives a more soft sort of outline. In terms of how this is made, it's spaghetti. I have not sorted this whatsoever. I kind of just made this and went, yeah, no, this works. But let's see. This here is kind of what gives the, kind of painted effect. So if you kind of look here, the like splotchiness, and you can kind of see some lines if you squint. It is a little difficult. This is also directly taken from the Matthew Flames painter tutorial. It's adjusted a little bit because of, I wanted to do some stuff with having, so yeah, this is how it kind of changes the bump. And here is the, here's the Fresnel effect. So, it's just a little bit on the edges, which is, it took some warming up to, but I did end up coming around on it. It takes the painter effect that he talks about in his Jack Black section, and I also added some dots to it because I was feeling particularly fancy. I was like, oh, it'd be fun to put some dots, some violet. It was originally supposed to be stars, and you can kind of see how it's a star shape in like the highlight zones. Didn't work out exactly as planned, but it worked good enough that I was happy with it. And then, all of this is kind of just overlaid on the texture. So, and that's why I've got two here, is because this one is for the lighting, and this one's, for the actual texture. And because it got all sorts of out of whack if I put the, did the lighting based off the texture. So I figured I'd just do it separately. This is basically a direct copy and paste of Xander's shader, with the exception of this mix node, where it is then a copy of Artemis's like painted shader, and that allows for let's see, that allows for specifically this effect here, where the ground goes from the crosshatch to the painter and whatnot. Same with the sky, which is what I'll get into now. The sky was done with a color ramp, gradient, and so this is, I think, kind of an important thing to mention, is this light path is basically what this does is it mixes in a specific purple background, so that, you know, I can control the lighting of the characters separate from the lighting of the sky, just so it, you know, looks a little bit cooler that way. So, you know, if I change this around, changes that, but doesn't change the sky, and vice versa. But yeah, there's this mix shader, which is what kind of mixes between the kind of cross pixel hatch here and the painter effect of Xander. When it comes to moments like this, where the sky grows red, it is literally just me going here in this side tab, clicking on each of them, making a keyframe, fast forwarding, making another keyframe. Like, pretty simple for both of them. That was, because, you know, there's the darker bit portion there and the lighter portion up there. Let's see. For Xander's eyes, this is a really fun thing in my opinion. And, you know, actually this existed before all of this. It's just a line art modifier that I've baked and has some noise to it, so it kind of, you know, has this wobble effect. Which, let's see. I think here? Yeah, and then I have, with the noise, I've increased the position to kind of make it a little more anxious looking. Other than that, in terms of like shaders and whatnot, there's nothing much to it. Basically just that, and of course, you know, I had to move the empty around as the animation's going. Let's see. Next up, this was a lot of fun. So first off, this tentacle, right? It is a series of three bendy bones, my bad, that, you know, I control independently. I parented both the foot and the root as a child of this bone, so that, you know, as it's spinning, Xander's being dragged along with it. And it's actually not spinning this with a hashtag frame. There's no driver here. It's actually an empty, because that allowed me to turn this off as a child of the empty for when Xander gets flung here. And so the thing can just kind of stop, you know what I mean? Here took a lot of finagling to get right. Basically, you know, instead of, usually when you set animation curves, it is going to be a Bezier. So just so you kind of know what I'm talking about, which this isn't the keyframe, but, you know, in interpolation, usually it's going to start on Bezier. Constant always gives you that steppy motion, and then these are the easing. And so what I did is I chose exponential for both the camera and Xander. And then what I did is in easing mode, I did ease out, so that it starts off really quick, and then as it kind of slows down towards the end, giving, you know, some tension to build, while also changing the background to a red to really kind of give that pop, you know. Then, let's see. From there, I'd say next kind of cool thing I did was here with the ground. I found a tutorial about, you know, someone breaking the ground, and so I was like, oh, this is really cool. So it uses cell fracture and some geometry nodes work, and it kind of allows me to, you know, have Xander break the ground and lay down on it, which I thought was a lot of fun. And, you know, made it to be really cool for once the tentacles start hitting Xander. Let's see. From here, next up with Artemis, this motion is just kind of animated. I'll get into these effects here with the lines. That is something really cool in that I, of course, didn't come up with or anything, but it's something that, you know, I thought, oh, I think I could do this and enjoy this, and so I did. Huge fan of it. I think other thing before I get to that is compositing. If I head to the end here, hit a quick render image. So fun fact with this image, actually, so, you know, as you know, this is the thumbnail of the video. Xander, Artemis, their eye is actually changed from the violet to a red to give this monochrome red sort of look, which I thought looks really cool and stands out quite a lot, especially with the striped lines. There is a subtle glare, so that's how you're getting kind of, you know, that pop, which if I mute this, that's what it looks like otherwise. And so I like the glare quite a bit. Same thing with Xander's, you know, supernova and black hole eye. There is a vignette to kind of make the edges have, you know, that sort of feel, which I really enjoyed personally. And then there is this, which is kind of interesting. Basically, when it starts closing, I wanted to highlight this for a second. And so what I did is this, you know, subtracts it, turns it into a mask, which then gets multiplied by 0, so that, you know, when it's not in effect, it's gone. But then as time passes, the multiplier will start happening, getting up to 1, which, you know, enables the mask, which when added, when darkened, you know, gives the effect I was looking for. This add node is so that it actually goes fully dark by the end, because I did still need it to fade to black, and I knew I could have done it in like DaVinci or something, but I wanted to give it a try here, so I did. This is all came up by myself, but then when it comes to probably, I think, my favorite part of all this, my grease pencil work. So in 2D animation, there are smear frames and there are, you know, impact frames and little pop effects and whatnot. And so, you know, different people have different styles for going about this. I figured quick and dirty way that I thought would be a lot of fun still was making use of my drawing tablet and using some grease pencil. This was my first time really animating with grease pencil, the second time animating with grease pencil in Blender. I hated it the first time. This time was so much better. So basically, first smear you're gonna kind of see is here. The foot kind of smears a little bit. It's just a new keyframe every time it's necessary. I wanted to put smearing here, kind of forgot. It was late at night. I was just kind of done with it. Next smear you'll see is here. Very subtle, but kind of helps showcase the throw a little bit. Kind of shrinks as it slows down because, you know, you don't need the smear as much. Then probably my favorite part is right here. Impact frame. So what I did here was I used the fill tool to kind of, you know, basically block out each individual of the, like, the main colors, and then I put some extra purple lines here. What you also note about the lines is the angle. They kind of, you know, swoop in like the tip of a sparkle, and that is because that is very much Artemis's kind of whole shtick is, you know, the sparkle stars, and so I figured in the impact frames that should kind of be reflected. Granted, I do feel like I could also see, you know, Xander having their own sort of design element that should have been used instead of Artemis because it's using the same color and whatnot. But got the point across. Anyways, then here did some wind effects, just kind of moved it down with Xan. Then hits the ground, impact frames with the purple. Second level of impact frames that kind of show more of the cracking. One last tiny set of impact frames because of the bounce. And then here, tiny bit of smearing there, tiny bit of smearing there, tiny bit of smearing there. Before Xan collapses on the ground. Which, there's not much for quite a bit until here, where it's just another impact frame, this time with the FF59 FF violet that is attributed to Artemis. just so you can have a specific impact right there before it moves off. Also, this spike is the spikiest spike because that helps indicate the way it's moving. We get to here where you'll see these wind effects to kind of show that it's moving. I actually put those in afterwards because I figured with these wind effects it would help showcase the movement, even though if you really kind of look close, it's not moving that much. You can kind of follow the vertice, but the wind effects kind of helps really sell it. At least until it's not needed anymore. And so that continues here and here. And I would like to mention, these are all individually animated frames. I don't know how many there are. I don't want to know, I don't think. I just remember it was kind of purgatory getting through. So, yeah, not fun. But here, once again, impact frame showing the way. It's about to move. Impact frame showing the way it's about to move. Alright, and that's it for the grease pencil sections. Huge fan of it, personally. Other last thing, I think, when it comes to, you know, kind of the how I made this, is gonna be, if you look at Zan, especially here in the beginning, is you'll notice the kind of stepped nature of their movement, where it's like, here, look, 34, 35 doesn't move, 36 moves, 37 doesn't move, 38 moves. So animated on 2s, and that's just done by a simple, if we go into the graph editor, that is just done with a very simple stepped curve. There is a little bit, I did, you know, end it at 404, because that is roughly when, for certain things, you know, didn't have to be done for everything, but especially for the root, that was very important to end kind of early, because when Zan's flying through the air like this, you really don't want it to be stepped, you want it to be smooth. Just that way it kind of gives the best viewing experience. I did see it with steps, wasn't a fan, so that's kind of why I went about it that way. Other than that, I don't think there's much more to it. Camera angles, slight rotation because it, you know, made it look cooler. IMO. And yeah, I think, you know, it's not a particularly complex scene or anything. It just kind of took a while, you know, setting up the materials and whatnot. But I genuinely believe, as like I'd say this is my 5th animation project, 3rd if we're counting just 3D animated, 5th, you know, good animation project, 3rd if we're counting 3D animated, and I'm extraordinarily happy with this, and I cannot wait to take kind of the lessons I've learned here, you know, with the grease pencil, with the materials, into my further projects, especially in animation as well. My animation has improved, I would say. All that being said, thank you very much for watching. Long, rambly, but, you know, how-to video. Or not how-to, more of, you know, how to die. But gives you some places to kind of start with if you're interested. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next Friday. Not Wednesday, because next Friday is when The Amazing Digital Circus comes out. I saw it in theaters, and I have a video to make on it, based off something relevant to the future of this channel. So, yeah, very happy with how it ended, but I am happy, is what I said. But yeah, alright, thank you again for watching. Have an amazing week. I'll see you next Friday.